We are recording, just in case, so I don't forget.
It doesn't look like we've got a forum yet. Do we have a
No.
forum?
It's just you. It's Sandra. Oh, and Pat Stallard. That's right.
Well, we've waited 5 minutes. Why don't we go ahead and start the agenda, because the only item we have to vote on are.
That's weird. What happened? Let's try that again.
We had it for a second.
Oh, that's weird.
We see both, but they're small.
Okay.
Need to make that agenda bigger or scroll so we can see it.
Ugh, my computer is so slow. Okay, can you see it?
As long as your eyesight's good, you can see it.
This is an eye test.
The on our end, the Zoom has moved. If your app or whatever was updated, it's at the top now with a plus and a minus if you need to zoom in.
I hate that everybody is so little. Now I can't tell who's clicking in.
If you click participants, you'll see a whole list.
Everybody's teeny tiny since I'm sharing.
We may actually look better teeny tiny. Think of it.
I've tried to. Oh, I can make it bigger. There we go. Will it stay? Yeah. Oh, hang on. Hey, Brian, are you here?
I am.
Sandra, are we? I think we still lack a quorum, but we can start talking about our one item on the agenda, I guess.
Exactly. Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay. So we have listed here to discuss the capture rate studies request for proposal. And so that was what we were tasked with to bring back some information about capture rate studies. And we tried to get someone else's RFP for a similar thing, so that we would have something to start with, kind of like we did with the other RFP that we did for the campaign. So the one we got is a little bit not so specific to capture rate study, but as a waste characterization audit from Fort Worth. And I think Diane had to step out for a second, but we do have that was shared with us from the recycling partnership, and Vincent is a contact there that shared that with us, and he also suggested that they are available for technical support if we need it as we move forward with this, because it's the kind of projects that they do, and we've worked with them a lot already. So, so that may be helpful. Diane, were you going to share that PDF, or do you?
I was, but it says other applications. I don't know. I can't find it.
Do you have it open?
Oh, here it is. Adobe Acrobat. Adobe. It's not.
So we thought we might just look at some of they have a section called scope of work, and we just thought by looking at it, we may be able to have some discussion about some specifications that we may want to put in to an RFP for our own study.
That makes a lot of sense because actually that's the important part of it.
Got it, Diane?
I'm getting it. It would not let me share it for some reason. But going to now, I hope. There it is. Do you guys see it? I know it might be little. Let me make it bigger. Is that okay?
Yes. So
You want me to scroll to the?
yeah, get to the part where it says scope of work.
Okay.
Just like our RFP, there's a lot of stuff that, oh, I think you passed it.
Did I pass it?
Yeah.
There it
It's
is.
30.0 right there. Okay, so we just got this today, so we haven't had a ton of time to really look at it, but the first section here, basically listing what their characterization audit would entail, and they're very specific. They have a pay-as-you-throw program, and they stated 400 garbage and 400 recycle carts. They're not doing yard waste at all. Just if yard waste happened to be in either of those recycle or garbage stream, that's the only time it would be documented through this, and that they would be randomly selected. And this is each like they're documenting each address that those carts were at. So the, I mean, they start right off with the number, which I have no idea how many we would want done.
It seems like a very low number.
Yeah.
I think that it might be 400 in each area that we might want to do, such as we was talking about a low income area, an unincorporated area, or however we wanted to set it up. But I think 400 containers actually gives us a pretty good sample. That's my first thoughts on it, and so I would have thought that would have been a pretty decent number.
Carts are in each of the different categories you're talking about.
Yeah, 400 in each category. So if we have four different parts of town, or however we want to select it, 400 in each of those.
As each part of 10, a similar number of participants. In other words,
Mhm.
400 large number.
You're breaking up, Sandra. I've only caught part of what you said.
Part of what I was looking at was each of the four parts that you're talking about does not, I believe, have the same number of participants.
Well, I think that ideally we would want the same number, but what we're looking for is a statistically significant sample that we would feel pretty sure that we're capturing what that area is actually doing. So I don't know that it has to be the same number for each area, as long as we can consider it statistically significant, and it's going to give us pretty decent data. We'll get within plus or minus 3 to 4%, which I think is pretty good.
Actually, I agree with you because the number of participants, for example, in the urban services district is possibly significantly different than in the unincorporated portions of Jefferson County.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, in the unincorporated area, we would probably be hard pressed to find 400 households that recycle without covering a very large area.
I agree.
So I think that when we write ours, we would want to specify, number one, that whatever it is, it has to be enough containers to make a statistically significant I guess, assessment of the collection in that particular area. And that can be up to 400 households.
Say area,
Does that sound okay?
are you talking about area like neighborhood, or are we differentiating like USD versus a small city, or?
Yeah,
you know,
well,
that-
we've not really determined, which ones that we're going to do. I think that we know that we would want to do probably maybe two parts of the USD. One is a low income, one is a higher participation area. We would love to do one in an unincorporated area and potentially one in a small city if possible.
I think even more than that, because each of them, well, I don't espouse a lot of them, they're quite different also. We might want to select more than one.
We can do that. Whoever it is, I think that we need to make sure that obviously they have all services. So I think that would knock down the number of small cities fairly significantly to the ones that have garbage, recycling, and yard waste. Although yard waste is not part of the study, if it's a place that does not have yard waste, I'm sure that we're going to find yard waste in the garbage.
Like,
So we would want to make sure that all of the different areas are the same in that regard.
mhm.
So do you guys, we don't have to nail down the areas that we need to do. Just that they need to be statistically significant. They have to have all the different types of services. We want any possible differences captured, like high income, low income, urban, suburban, contracted, subscription. I think that would cover it in our analysis or when we try to set up this specifications.
Pete, this is Bruce.
Yes, sir.
May I ask a question?
Hmm?
It kind of broke up with regard to how many groupings of 400 are you suggesting we do?
Well, I don't know that we're gonna, I would say up to 400, up to what the consultant would feel is a statistically significant sample, up to 400, because we don't want to go too much above that. And then we have to determine how we're going to be collecting all these samples too. So,
Okay.
yeah, we don't necessarily have to go to that amount.
Thank you.
Guess if we're doing like an unincorporated area or maybe a small city or something, would we have the waste hauler? Who collects this? Is it the normal waste hauler? They just are asked to collect it separately, or does this contracted entity have trucks too?
I think what you can find is it's been done in a couple different ways. One is you go out in a box truck and you take their cart and tag it, or you pull all the stuff out and you put it in a box truck. So this address is right here. This address is right here. That's one way to do it, which I would think is probably the most labor intensive. And you try to do that with 400 houses, and you're probably that's a huge task. I would think that our best bet, and Bruce and some of the haulers can kind of give a little bit better input on this maybe, is that you would start with some empty trucks. You would identify the individual addresses that have all three services. The garbage would be picked up in one truck in this one area. The recycling would be picked up from those same households. And that would be your sample. You wouldn't necessarily tag, you would say that's the area, not necessarily by the address. We're going to have to identify the addresses because we have to ensure that they're all doing the same thing. So I would say that we would want to do it for picking up a load. So the private hauler would pick up that load, dedicated truck for those households.
I understand why you might want to identify addresses in a subscription area, but I'm not sure that it makes much difference in the urban services district or in a city like mine.
Well, if not all people participate is one of the issues. If you just go by an area and pick up every household for garbage, but only 50% of those households recycle, then you're not going to get a good representative sample of what the recyclers are doing. We only want to pick up recyclers, and we want to, that's what you do. You identify the recyclers, and then you pick up their recycling and their garbage. You don't pick up anything else from any other households. So,
Okay, but for example, go ahead.
lots of times recycling and garbage is picked up on different days. So you have to know these addresses beforehand.
It's easy. The recycling for the participants is out there next to the trash can. So in some places, it might be easier than we're worried about.
Can you repeat that again, Sandra?
For example, when I recycle, my recycle bin is right next to my trash bin. So it's easy to tell who recycles in my neighborhood as opposed to some of the other ones we're worried about.
Yes, I think that would be the case. If they're both on the same day, that does make it much easier.
Yeah.
But rarely in the urban services district are they performed on the same day.
Is this asking a waste hauler to collect an area separately or certain addresses separately? Is that something we would have to pay them to do? Or would they just do it?
Well, that's a good question. I think that would remain to be determined. It would have to be a dedicated truck. We do know that.
It would be easier if the waste haulers did not have to perform part of the function.
If they did not,
Right.
I'm not sure how we can do 400 households without involving the waste haulers. I mean, we may be able to do it using one of our Metro trucks. That's Metro taking on that task. And I don't know how the private haulers would feel about us picking up customers of theirs.
Actually, maybe Bruce and Brian would like to share.
I guess I'll speak first. I was waiting on Brian. Obviously, if we have to dedicate a truck to do a certain sampling, there would be the cost incurred by the company, which we would obviously prefer to pass on to the city for those services. Even though we are a great proponent of recycling and proper solid waste collection and disposal, we are a for-profit entity, and at least we would like to have the costs covered for that, I guess, contribution.
Yeah, Bruce, this is Brian. I would tend to agree with that. Can I back up just one step? When we're talking about statistically significant and how to get the sample set, one of the things we have always done, and Metro has done this as well, Pete and Karen, they employ a research firm that would know the questions to ask and would get a statistically significant segment in Jefferson County so that we know we are going down the right path to get a significantly significant sample. For example, they could, to your point, Pete, they could ask, what services do you have? Do you have trash? Do you have recycling? Do you have yard waste? And one of the questions that would qualify or disqualify the potential participant would be a yes, no question. And I'm just throwing that out for discussion because when we have done any surveys in Jefferson County, we have always used a research firm to get the subset so we know that we're plus or minus 1.5 or 2% on the statistically significant spectrum. So that's just a food for thought. We kind of skipped ahead to the process rather than the steps that would be taken to get our sample set. So I'm just suggesting, and the other thing that I always find, and maybe Metro has as well, the statistically significant sample is actually less than you typically would think it would be. I noticed Fort Worth did 80 in 5 different segments for 400 total, not 400 in each geographical subset. So I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion for discussion for this committee about how you would qualify those that would participate in the survey. Just food for thought.
I would,
I agree. Mhm. Sorry, go Pete.
no, I agree with you, Brian. We can put up a maximum number, but we can, as far as putting out this in an RFP, we would let that company do this, determine the statistically significant sample size with a top number that says don't go over this. So if they're saying it's 80, then, I think that 80 is what we do. But I guess one of my questions is, it's probably a total number that they would come up with to say, well, we just need this many. And then, are we tasked, the staff tasked with coming up with that list of 80 or 100 or 200 households that's going to participate in each one of those areas? So we give the consultant that's going to come in and do the capture rate study. Here's the addresses on the list. These are who's going to be collected. You tell us, you've told us that this is the statistically significant number of households that you need. We'll collect it, bring it to you. You can do the study and tell us what the results are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be better if they told us what they felt like a statistically significant number was, and then let us go out and find those addresses. I think our bid is going to be much less expensive.
Yeah, if just to use an example, something I learned that you might find interesting, if we were just going to do a significant study in all of Jefferson County for just trash or solid waste, what would you think the number of homes would be that would make it statistically significant, plus or minus 1.5%?
Based on what they found in the study in the first time in looking at cost of services for the unincorporated area, it wasn't much more than 300.
It's 550.
Yeah,
And that,
so-
that doesn't sound like an insurmountable task for the survey if you get the right people asking the right questions so that the committee knows you're going to get a statistically significant sample. I find that interesting. I'm not much of a researcher, but I really found that interesting because you'd think it would be thousands.
right.
But it's not, if the right questions are asked. And if you're not discriminating on the front end with your qualification, and this to me would be a relatively simple qualification. Do you have solid waste? Do you have recycling? Do you have yard waste? And then maybe the other questions would be, zip code area, things like that, so that you know that you're getting a pretty representative survey from the entirety of Jefferson County. So, to me, the qualification up front really makes the process easier. And I think there would be a methodology to get to, how do we figure out how to get the materials assessed? I mean, from my perspective, just to kind of dovetail on Bruce's, I understand the cost, and that is a significant process. But that is something that could be set up as a project, and it could be accomplished. I mean, there's no doubt about that. It can be accomplished.
Brian, when you've mentioned a couple times a survey, I did not envision a survey prior to this, other than identifying who has the different services, which
Yeah.
we don't necessarily have to contact that homeowner to do that.
Yeah.
At least that's not what I envisioned. Do you see us conducting a survey?
Well,
And
I
if
may be using the wrong word, Pete. I'm just trying to get to someone who could identify the subjects in the test.
Gotcha.
So how do you get to that? If we just give you could do a city, so Sandra could say, yeah, come do the city of Prospect. But would that be statistically significant with everything in Jefferson County? In a expert survey, I'm going to use this, I'm sorry to use the word survey, you're probably not, a research person would be able to tell us what would give us the most statistically significant survey on people that have those services in Jefferson County. I can't do that, but there are people much smarter than I that could give you that. And maybe we're not concerned about statistically significant. You know, maybe we're just concerned about getting 500 samples and seeing what we learn. And that could be okay too. I mean,
Well,
it could.
I think as part of our RFP, we would want to put out the areas, and we're talking about measuring not all of Jefferson County, but individual segments of Jefferson County, because the behaviors are going to be different in each one of those.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what we was talking about is if we did, let's say it's 80. I think identifying 80 in in the urban services district is going to be as easy as us going out there, looking who recycles, looking who's, you know, everybody's going to have garbage, but identifying recyclers, writing down those addresses, and we know that those are going to be people that we can test. With Sandra, it may be a little bit different. And I'm not sure that Prospect is the area that we need. It could be. Maybe it's J-Town. Maybe, I don't know, St. Matthews. I don't know. But that's something that we would have to do. And the subscription area is the hardest because you've got up to 5 different haulers hauling in an area. How are we going to identify 80 households based on subscription? That would take all of the private haulers saying, this is the customers that we have in this area. These are the people that have recycling and garbage. So we would have to have information from the private haulers to be able to really do the subscription areas.
Well, the one other thing I thought of, and this would be my last comment, is what kind of approvals do we need from a homeowner to go through their
I was
trash and
wondering
recycling? And I don't know the answer to that right now, but we have had a lot of what is called trash pulls when the police call us in and ask us to do various services for them. And they actually have some kind of legal permission at that point without going to the homeowner to do that. I'm just bringing up, I wouldn't care if somebody went through my trash and recycling, but somebody might. And that's something we probably ought to clarify before we go to someone's house and pick up their trash and recycling to go through it. Just a thought.
In many of the in many of the ordinances around town related to collection, I would say the vast majority of them have provisions that once the waste is set out at the curb, it becomes the city's property. I don't know if that applies everywhere, but that certainly seems to be in a lot of the ordinances in some of the home rule cities across town. I think, Brandon, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, I think that's true too, that once you put it in the city's containers, the city owns the containers as well too. They don't belong to the residents in the urban services district, so it's the city's property. That's my understanding. Obviously, the county attorney can clarify this for you pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get that. We'll run that past the county attorney before we do it.
Clarify what this company or what the researchers are we paying them merely for a report with data that is provided to them? Or do they have to get some of the data on their own?
In my view of what we would be doing is we would be hiring someone to take material that we collected, to take the samples, sort them, and give us the data that shows what is currently getting recycled from these households and what and the individual commodity level and at what rate is it getting recovered. So it's going to show us what's going to the landfill, which would be a waste composition audit. It's going to show us what is in the recycling containers and what, is in there that is getting recovered, and then the different percentages. And that's what we would want. And I think that the next section here, 30.1.2, consultant services are required only in the audit and categorize the waste and recycling by weight for each residential address. They're doing individual address. Well, it's compiled Excel spreadsheet for presentation. So they're asking, oh, I can't click on that. What they're asking is what it's going to be like for the individual addresses. So in this case, I'm thinking that with 80 households, they may get a box truck and they may go to each one of these and pull the waste from each one, bag it, and that would be the sample. And they would separate each one of those. So if we're doing if the number to get us to a statistically significant sample size is only 80, that may change our mind on how we go about collecting the material. We may have the consultant do it.
Thank you.
Pete, was there somewhere you wanted to go in that document?
I just wanted to kind of scroll down a little bit. I apologize for not getting a chance to take a look at this before the meeting.
Is this the down that you meant or the down that goes up? The down that goes up.
There's a little section that of an example of the characterization, which it seemed like in theirs, they give that as a sample, but if the company thinks they want to change it, they could.
So where was that?
It's further down, Diane, I think the chart that
Oh,
it reminded me of like when we did it the other day at the different categories. So that might be included to give them the idea. This is what, how detailed we want to get.
Right. And that would be like when we did it for the study several years ago, we went all in. We went down to the smallest of detail when they did their samples. We don't have to go that far, but that is something that we specify in our RFP, the commodities that we want them to sample. So you're right, Karen, this is probably about as deep as we really need to go.
I think you might want to scroll back up, I guess. I just wanted to see that list, but we could go back to some of the other details of the
Karen, Diane, and myself. There was an echo, sorry. Karen, Diane, and myself, as well as several other team members, we did a capture rate study for the 444 building downtown. We took their waste and we separated it. We went through this whole process and it was very interesting. It's the first one that I've done by hand. And it was interesting in the fact that we learned and we was able to sort out fairly easily the data. I don't think it's really all that difficult to sort this stuff out. If they just gave us the weights, we can do the I guess the calculations on the percentages. But I think if we're going to do this, we want them to do it all the way. But it's not such a difficult thing to do. It's definitely dirty It's definitely a lot of waste to sort through. And that's why I think, Karen, when you talked with Vincent LeRae, did you ask about Chicago? Who was the other ones? Denver? Did you?
No, and whoever he was hoping to get another document from someone, but it must be somewhere out west because he said they were on Pacific time, so he didn't think they may have gotten the email in time to get it to us today. But I didn't ask specifically for any particular cities. I just asked if he had any suggestions.
Okay. Well, that's another document that we hope to get before too long. But for today, in looking at and hearing what we've talked about, I think you guys have given us some pretty decent information to kind of start forming an idea for an RFP. And maybe we can come up with some different scenarios for the next meeting, some different language, and that will help us get through this. But I'm hearing that we need statistically significant, however many that is. We need those different segments. We need people that are all doing the same services. We need somebody that's going to go ahead and do the sorting, and they're going to be able to calculate all of the different capture rates and give us a report at the end. And we'll have what we expect in that report. Now, another question that I have is 1 week. Is 1 week enough to tell us? With most studies, you want to do it by season. So you would do, like, winter waste is going to be different than summer waste. So when we did the original study, we did 2 seasons. Do we want to do 2 seasons here? And for what we want, I'm not sure that doing it 2 seasons really gives us much of anything, because really we're doing this as a way to guide us educationally moving forward. So we're going to figure out the items that we really need to focus our education on. We would do a pre-test. We would do the education of those households. Then we would come back and do another test to see if we accomplished our goals. So a minimum of 2 passes on this is what we're going to need. I don't think we need any more than that. What's everybody else's thoughts?
My perception is that we would be looking at more recycling in the summer rather than any of the other seasons, unless we're talking about yard waste. But in general, would we not have more variety and more recycling in the summer?
Statistically, let me look here real quick. Let me look at some numbers.
What makes you think that, Sandra?
Well, it just seems like people have more parties. There's more going on outdoors. I can see certain things not changing much over the season. Like my next door neighbor is a strong advocate of getting her things from Amazon. And I think her cardboard rate for this, for example, would be the same summer and winter. But in general, I would think that more activity takes place in the summer that might lead to recycling. I could be absolutely wrong.
If,
Well, that makes sense.
I'm actually going to share my screen, and I know that this spreadsheet is crazy looking, but let me blow it up just a little bit. This is this line right here. Can anybody see this? This is Metro hauled to recycling facility, and we get these reports from recycling facilities. So if we just want to look at 2021, you have January 951, 877, 998. It's not really
Much different,
jumping up and down.
which would support you doing just once.
Yes. You know, if anything, our numbers go up around right before Christmas. A lot more packages coming in, a lot more cardboard in the stream. So that's our biggest time, especially with drop off. I mean, we get a whole lot more in the drop off in about that time too. So honestly, if we did a December, that's really not characteristic of the entire year. I would say sometime in the April or October, September, October. I think we would want to do it with kids in school. I do think that that has a little bit of an impact. So a target of April, May, or September and October. How does that sound?
Good.
Can I offer another couple items of consideration, Sandra?
Absolutely.
And Pete, I understand, you know, we want to identify the 550 locations that we're going to take the sampling from. We need to bear in mind that not everyone's trash and recyclables are picked up on the same day. So in doing so, we're going to have to notify, or the other option is have a truck for each of the 5 days of the week that they may be serviced to do that collection. So I think the first order of business would be to establish the route of which we're going to sample. Does that make sense with anybody?
I think yes, we would have to identify the areas that we're going to go. Urban Services District, not a problem. A home rule city, probably not a problem, or another contracted area such as an HOA. Subscription area, that is the one that really gets complicated.
Mhm.
We would have to work with the individual haulers and I don't know, this just thinking about it, taking an area and saying, who are your people within this area that have recycling, garbage, and yard waste collection? Populate all those, get their days, do some work on how we can do that. It might take 5 days for us to pick up all of those samples in the suburban area, but that's the nature of the subscription areas. And we find what those are, and that's how we do it. But we're going to have the help of the private companies to tell us what their customers are within a defined area. And then, you know, we have to make sure that that defined area is going to have enough participation. So, you know, I think that the private haulers are going to be the ones that need to tell us where is a good place for us to do it in a subscription area where their highest participation is. That may vary depending upon hauler as well, because haulers like to focus on a certain area versus another area. So it just gets complicated when we're doing the subscriptions.
It is complicated, but I believe you'll get the support of the hauler if we have a nicely designed plan of attack. And, you know, it's basically a route sheet that you want followed. And, you know, we can have individual meetings as long as the information is learned is kept, you know, confidential. I don't know that you'll have any problem whatsoever with the hauler.
No, I don't anticipate that, but I don't want to assume that either. Well, I think that staff has a little bit to go back here. We'll continue to work on trying to get a better RFP from somebody that's actually done this with the help of the recycling partnership. But we can go ahead and start putting together some of these criteria for a specifications for an RFP. And we can come back to the committee at the next meeting and discuss those.
That's good.
Awesome.
I don't have my,
I'm
am I
sorry, Sandra.
still short one person in a quorum.
I think so. Right, Pete? Aren't we supposed to have
I-
4?
Yes, need to have 4. I don't think we have 4.
No, we got Patrick Stollard, Sandra, and Bruce Burrow, just the 3.
Okay.
Sandra,
Well-
do you want me to hold the minutes until next month? Oh, she's gone. All right. So Pete, shall I just hold the minutes for next month?
I think we have to. If we don't have
Yeah.
a quorum, we can't vote on them.
Okay. I just wanted somebody to say it.
Okay. Hopefully Sandra pops back up here.
Yeah.
There you are. So we'll hold the minutes for the next meeting, Sandra, if that's okay. And as this really wasn't an official meeting, we can just put together some notes about what was discussed.
That sounds,
So
and it looks like our next 10th. And hopefully we'll have a quorum then.
yes, that
And
would be great.
we don't even need a motion to dismiss.
Nope.
Because it's not official.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. We'll see some of you tomorrow.
Definitely.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.